Since I was here as a juror, I thought I'd say a few words about jurying in general, without talking about the show too much, because it kind of spoils things. But I thought about juried shows and what artists and arts patrons think about juried shows. And so I remembered writing this for the Anchorage Daily News in 2004. It was kind of interesting to me because, you know, you can't remember very well what you said about anything 12 years ago. I don't know about you, but so I kind of read it fresh, and I would make it a little different today. And you'll notice that it's a little bit dated, which also seems kind of interesting to me. But I know you don't want me to read to you, but it's not long. I don't know if you've ever written for a newspaper, but whatever you write for a newspaper, the headline writers put whatever they want on it, which doesn't necessarily have anything to do with what you were talking about. But the headline writer said, juried shows don't make or break art careers. That's okay. And here's what I said in 2004. If Michelangelo were alive and living in Anchorage, would he enter the All-Alaska Juried exhibition? I think not. Yet Alaska artists by the hundreds dutifully photograph and mail slide entries, kind of the old days slide entries, to a juror from outside, capital O, and wait for the accepted or rejected verdict, a la a check mark, that comes in the mail about 6 weeks later. When all the accepted work is finally exhibited and the cash awarded, it is more often than not met with the jaw-grinding criticism of the juror, criticism of the art and artist, criticism of the process, and questions about why some works were rejected or accepted. I think the artist's glee or disappointment is directly proportional to the amount of emotion invested in the process. Angst in, angst out. While some people view the annual show and tell as the peak of local artistic validation, artists in general feel compelled to win, place, or show since they know they are being judged in this manner. It's collectively self-inflicted. A few famous, quote, famous Alaska artists don't play the game. Either they have not had much success in the process, see themselves as above the fray, or don't want the onus of rejection tarnishing the artistic aura they have long worked to create. Most established artists in Alaska take an interest in the jurying process and the resulting exhibitions, however. That is not to say they love it. The choices of the juror are often controversial. Not all jurors have been stellar, except for me, of course. One need not be an art scientist to recognize that some works accepted for past shows have been trite or poorly executed with little or no creative spark, while some of the shows were not that great. The idea behind juried shows is to winnow the shaft from the grain in terms of aesthetics and finish with an exhibition of high quality. It's the same reason there are auditions on Broadway. You wouldn't want to pay $80 to see Tiny Tim in the chorus line. And it's about raising the bar, setting a standard, recognizing excellence, rewarding high quality. Does it always work out that way? No. The success of the juried show ideal is dependent on several factors. Vital ingredients include a qualified juror, the juror's investment of enough time and energy to select the best work, the juror's criteria, his integrity and independence, the quality of the work submitted, and the physical installation of the exhibit. That's your job. Judging art from slides is the norm, but nuances are not always evident in transparencies, or digital images for that matter. In addition, only a limited number of slides are permitted and close-ups are prohibited. Less experienced artists fail to recognize the importance of good quality, well-lighted slides. Some jurors, evidently insecure in their task, include cop-out verbiage, and this I really dislike. Statements like, "This is just the art I like and others may disagree," or "Jurors have biases," and blah, blah, blah. But a good juror will suspend purely personal preferences when there is a clear choice of quality. The juror should clearly state the criteria upon which the choices are to be made, make the choices based upon those criteria, and stand by them. Don't be wishy-washy. A good artist should be able to build a record of acceptance into juried exhibitions based upon a somewhat uniform standard of excellence, not just opinionated or random choices. A juror should look at all the submissions carefully and seriously, and more than once or twice. The juror must have complete independence and not be influenced by anyone. Organizers should leave the juror alone to do the judging, which I'm happy to say happened in your case. Jurors should be selected based on a proven record of education and experience. Jurors should be highly qualified. Outside jurors are sometimes preferable since they bring a fresh perspective without prejudice. But just because they are from Seattle or New York doesn't automatically mean they are better than Alaskans at everything. They may be lousy jurors. An artist should not hang his hat on any one juried exhibition. It is part of a long process of wins and losses. Not everyone will appreciate what an artist is trying to communicate. It may take time for an artist to put things in perspective. Hindsight often brings a wiser understanding. An artist is not validated by a few juried shows or by one outside juror. There are hundreds of successful artists, writers, and performers who endure years of rejection before they are recognized at all. If you are true to yourself and secure in your vision, it shouldn't matter much if others sometimes dismiss your work. Artists probably will not receive feedback on their work, accepted or not. But there are ways to determine the comparable quality of works and the reasons for success or failure at being included in the show. Read the juror's biography and credentials. Notice the number of entries in proportion to accepted pieces. Most important, look at the exhibition and view the works in context. An artist may have been wronged or may have been lucky. At least consider the fact that the work might not have been that hot. If an artist can't stand the heat of rejection, maybe he or she should quit playing the game. That's a little severe. I don't know if I'd have said that to you today, but another approach is to view juried exhibitions as just one interesting and educational aspect of a career, and know that you may win some and lose some. If you don't make the cut this year for this show, do like the Chicago Cubs, wait till next year. If it's a professional show, please no ribbons. The colored ribbons are fine for the best covered dish at the county fair, but are far too tacky for serious artists and museum quality art. I wonder if Michelangelo got a blue ribbon for that ceiling thing he did. Anyway, that's 2004. I think I'd write it a little differently today. I tried to write things that were sincere on my part, but also a little provocative to get people, especially artists in this case, to think about things. And I also got tired of, the whining that follows every juried exhibition. So you can take it or leave it. Anyway, here is my criteria for a show, and this I would apply to any show, I think. There should be some element of innovation or imagination, newness to it, and avoidance of cliches, either in materials, process, or content. Not strictly technical or mechanical, but has a human element that's made by somebody. If you look at digital photography images, somehow there's the human quality is so distant that it becomes just paper. Ink on paper. You don't want to be too removed from your process. I think ideas are important, and artists has something to say, contribute to our collective consciousness, a twist, a humor, a political or social statement. It's not just the material itself. And the line between what used to be called fine arts and then crafts in today's world is much more blurred and interchangeable. Sometimes they don't delineate any longer. I think craftsmanship is important. There shouldn't be any obvious errors. There's some demonstration of skill, attention to detail, pride in workmanship, carefully constructed or rendered. That seems obvious to me, but I guess not to everyone. The materials should fit the subject matter or intent, and presentation is important. Things should be exhibited thoughtfully, the fasteners carefully selected, screws, nails, glue, stitches, if shown, become an integral part of the work, and they should be selected, not arbitrary. This includes bases and paint colors and stuff that is added on. That seems like an afterthought. Perhaps a modernist, not modern, but modernist sense of design and composition, as in the old principles of unity, variety, balance, contrast. There are no rules in this so-called postmodern age, but there should be a reason those rules are broken by the artist, and the reason should add to our understanding of the work. And just a few personal comments. I take the work very seriously. I appreciate being asked, and I feel obligated. I should feel obligated to do my best at it. So I looked at everything that was submitted several times over, sometimes 10, 12, 15 times. I wanted to include everything, but I think this is a better show. The best work is easy to select. Some things, frankly, are easy to exclude. Some things in the middle are iffy. A considerable portion of the show is iffy, to be honest, and that's always the case. I am responsible for my choices. I'm comfortable with them. I don't have regrets or doubts, and I stand by them. I've been in maybe 100 juried shows, been kicked out of many others. I understand the reward and the sense of loss. But the integrity of the process is important. Somebody said this to me about an artist that I couldn't stand as a human being, and it was because he was so brutally critical of everything. And I was talking to him about this, to this museum curator, and he said, I'll leave the name out, but he said he destroys everything that's good in a search for his own excellence. And I think that's an important point. We don't need to go that far, but I think if we search for excellence, we get better. Blah, 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 blah. Have any questions about that? Otherwise, we'll go to the images. Can't see. Should we move on?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
Don did let me know, feel free to shout out questions, and we'll also have a question and answer at the end.
Yeah, there's a noise here with the vent, and my hearing's not great anyway, so you need to yell it at me. Like, hey! Like that.
Okay.
Well, let's go to these then. Wanted to see some examples of my work, and so I picked out some. I guess I should use the microphone since it's here. This was a couple years ago. I collected things, found objects along the trail, in places like that. I cheated a little bit on a few of them, but it's called Road Trip. And it's assembled into that's a suitcase. You can see the handle at the top. It's open, it opens in the middle. Mostly metal. I think it's all metal. Okay. This is a very recent piece. It was in a show at the International Gallery. It's called Snow on Water. I had this piece, we had a gallery in Anchorage, and we had a jewelry case. It had a wood base and then a glass top. And I was always kind of fascinated by this wood base. I don't really even know what kind of wood it is. And I saved it for about 10 years or so. And then I took it out the other day, about a month ago. And this is what happened. I had several people remark about this piece, which really surprised me because I thought that the audience for it was rather limited. But I like the suggestion of water by the grain in the wood. It's hard to get the color just right on an image, but this is really close. It's about, 3 by 2 feet in there somewhere. And I'm not sure why, but I think in all these years, it's up there among my list of favorite pieces. I'll show you another one that's later in the section that one viewer said to me, it's like a haiku, and this has that similar kind of feeling to it, I think. It didn't take me very long to do it once I had the idea, but I don't know if I could do something like it again or as good again. I don't really know. And I'm not sure how to articulate why I feel that way about it.
What's the medium here?
It's carved wood, and the white is just acrylic, just splattered on there to begin. And it's just a very simple carving tool, just a wood mallet and a kind of curved chisel. I don't know, maybe an hour or two. It's funny how things like that in art, sometimes it just happens. It's almost like you have nothing to do with it. I look at it, I see it now, and it's like I had nothing to do with it. I just look at it as a work of art. Okay? The next few are recent works from the last year. These are in the Alaska Biennial show at the museum. They're carved pine boards that are made in this kind of accordion feeling. There's bamboo across the top. And I have leather and sinew and different materials, fish line that suspend these pieces in the middle. This is a birch branch, and it's dipped in white paint. They all have something to do with rain. I even kind of forget the titles, it's like spring rain and morning rain, and they meant something to me at the time, but I just kind of forget why I called them that. Next one is similar. And then I think the next slide is a slide of the three. I took this photo from the wall at the museum in Anchorage, the set of three. I think I've entered these shows since I came to Alaska in the early 70s. I think there's only 2 times when I've had 4 pieces accepted. This was one of those. I'm always surprised.
What's the size of these?
The wall that they're on is about 15 feet. So they're, like 2 by 4 in there somewhere. Not quite, maybe.
Is that paint or inlaid color?
It's thin so that it soaks. It's acrylic, and it just soaks in if it's applied thinly enough. And then there's a final coat of matte acrylic finish. I don't like any finishes, on wood. I would rather leave them bare, but for protection, I put it. It always kind of tones it down. It yellows it. I like the bright whiteness of the pine or alder or whatever it is. But I managed to keep these pretty close to that, I think. Okay. There's 3 parts to this. This was the other one that was in the biennial show. Hugh McPeck was a sculpture instructor at UAA for many years, and we became close friends, and I was shocked to hear that he died of a heart attack last year. And he gave me these pieces. This is a plexiglass, plastic piece here. It has these like screw holes and bulbs in it that reminded me of, ice formations like on the lake. You get those bubbling things in those air holes, and I put them aside for, I don't know, a year or two, and And finally I decided to use them for something. There's a conductor in the middle there, glass, from Alaska Railroad. We just found it. And I also was interested in the texture. There's just a kind of a beauty to this wood surface, you know, the chipped ply. And I debated with how much I should camouflage it and how much I should just leave it. You know, just the essence of the chipped wood, but the pattern in it is very aesthetic, I think. It's the same on that outside layer, but I put white flat paint and then graphite, rubbed it in, so those lines that you see are formed by the, and I used some acrylic to put the green in the center. And then the other half of the panel is the next image, I think. There you can see the chipboard around the outside. There's a glass, found objects in the middle, little ball bearing. Another one of the plastic spacers, whatever they were used for. I added a little red to it against my better judgment, but I thought it just needed a little spark of something. So it's kind of has this abstract painted effect. And then the next one, I believe, is the two together. Looks like that, kind of a yin and yang thing. It's called The Great Thaw. I was thinking about the environment and the earth and the world we live in and how it's changing. It's pretty scary. I went to a metal shop because I wanted to cover the right-hand side with something. And they had a piece of this, which is just was really nicely finished piece of steel. And so I cut that circle in it and used it for the other half, and seemed to work. This is another thing that just seemed to have a life of its own. You know, I was working with materials and it kind of evolved out of the process, and I was thinking about Hugh and what a good friend he was to me, and that I should use the materials in remembrance of him. I did a drawing for his wife, widow, with the pencils that he left behind. And it was a bird nest, because he loved birds. Before I start crying, let's go to the next one. This is the last thing I did a couple weeks ago. I had a show and I had a couple foam core pieces in it. I've done, my daughter Julie, who's director of the museum in Anchorage, we laugh about my foam core pieces. It just has become kind of a joke between the two of us. And I say, well, that's enough foam core, and then I come back to it. And I had a couple foam core pieces in the show, and this couple wanted to, they said, oh my God, we've been looking for this all our lives in Alaska. We want something with sea ice, and can you do us a foam core piece? And I said, oh, I don't like, I've been working for 50 years so that I don't have to do that kind of stuff anymore, you know. Don't be offended, but, you know, I finally have found my independence, and I don't want to guess what people want me to do, and I try to please them for money, and, you know, I can live without it, blah, blah, blah. And they said, okay, how much? So I said, well, it's just going to be whatever it is. You know, you got to put the money up front, and blah, 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 you know, all these restrictions thinking. And they said, okay, that's fine. And it turned out to be a really good thing for me, because this would have never happened. And I took the foam core idea and pushed it, I think, a step further. It's a 1/2 inch and 1 inch foam core I used a box cutter. There's different effects. I used spray enamels, flat, and sometimes I would overlay things. I could put just grass. You can see kind of the dried grass around there, sprayed over it, built up layers. This, just crumbling it up, and spraying from the side so you get white, dark on one side and white on the other of the creases. And if you use a dull blade, you get this kind of stuff happening in here, which I think is kind of fun. And if you take the blade, the tip of the blade and just scrape it, you can get that effect also. So I got it all finished, and I sent them a photo, and I said, you know, is this okay? Oh yeah, we just love it. She said, especially the ice cream cone. And then it just drove me crazy. I thought, oh my God, there's an ice cream cone in it. And so I texted her back and I said, unless you're really excited about the ice cream cone, can I change it? And she said, sure. And so I took this out. I added a piece over here and brought something in there to widen it and cut this down so it's not so oval. I just did everything I could to get the ice cream cone out of it.
What's on the right?
Yeah.
Vertical?
Uh-huh.
The bands of ice?
Which one?
On the right side.
Yeah.
Going down
This?
Yeah.
This is just carved. Like if you take your box cutter, go this direction and this direction, and just dig them out. And then used overlapping sprays, sprayed the inside, and then sprayed a little lighter blues and whites over the top. So you get this kind of crevice-looking thing happening. I wanted to get some little drama and depth to it in a few places. This is actually reflective here. It's kind of a mirrored surface. But he works for, I believe, ConocoPhillips, and had been in the Beaufort Sea, and they were really fascinated by the ice formations, and that was their impetus. It also has some suggestion of the global warming, which they were interested in as well. But anyway, I may not be done with foam core. I keep saying it, but I think I may not be done. Okay. This slide's a little blurry. It's because I took the photograph with thinking it's on automatic focus when it was on manual, and so that's what happens. But these are things I collected. I walk every day with my dogs on the trail, sometimes just a bike trail, even an asphalt trail, but I'm out every day. And I say it's for the dogs, but it's really for me. And these are things I found, for the most part, on the trail. Sunglasses, spray can from some graffiti artist. Old stop sign, paint can lids. And it's, another artist gave me a, one of those Lazy Susans that spins. So I put the materials on there, and this will turn around manually. I'm trying to think of the title. Doesn't matter, I guess. Something about trail mix, that's it. Trail mix, it's called. Okay. This is in my yard in Anchorage. Did it, I don't know, maybe 5-10 years ago. I had a big piece of wood. I can't remember the dimensions right now, but this is all cut out of a single piece. I used a, what do you call them, for rough cutting. You have a blade on the top and you sawzall. I used just a sawzall and cut, I think if I recall, there was like 6 cuts. And then I put them together, was going to have them movable, then I decided I kind of like certain arrangement of it. So they're held with large spikes that go through 1, 2, 3 places. My neighbor said to me, that's just great the way you made that moose in the front. He said every time I drive by, I think those are moose legs. That's just brilliant, the way you made those moose legs. But I had no such thing in mind, but And I don't know what kind of moose he has in his yard, but okay. There's a little interesting story. I put this one in there. This is kind of a favorite piece of mine also. We had a gallery in the Performing Arts Center downtown in Anchorage, and one day I came by and there were pigeons all over the sidewalk, and some of them were bloodied and they were, you know, like terrified, and one was hiding behind the door, and I felt sorry for them all. And I asked somebody what the deal is on the pigeons, and they said, oh, they came and power hosed them off the building. They're going to redo the roof. And they had these pieces, these wire pieces are the things they put across buildings to keep the pigeons off. They're like spikes. And so I dug some out of the dumpster, and I wound them into a spiral, and then I shrink wrapped them. You know, with a shrink wrapper, you just heat the plastic, and so the spikes came through. I just piled them up, and I called it no-fly zone. I tried to get the bird treatment center to take care of a pigeon, and they just scoffed at me. You know, they're pigeons and they're federally protected and blah, blah, blah. So I said, well, I didn't know we had a pecking order for taking care of birds. I thought, you know, you take care of a bird or you don't take care of a bird, but not so. So anyway, the poor things are just, I don't know what happened to them. And this one, I did a show at the International Gallery, and I was thinking about the alien things, like the Alien movie had those creatures there, all kinds of creatures in the Star Wars things. And I think these are all kind of Hollywood images of what life on other planets would be like. What would they really be like? You know, what are they most likely to be, and how would I envision that? And this was one of them. This is made out of plastic and resins and a clear, you know, see-through plastic ropes and things like that, and spray enamels, and they're floating on water in a tank. You know, it kind of had this idea of this kind of growth that you might find somewhere in the beginnings of life. This artist was looking at them, and I was wondering what he was thinking. Finally he said, I don't know what they're supposed to be, but they look like assholes. Okay, thank you. Okay, next. This one just has a scythe on a base. It's called Cheating Death. It's just fastened by one double screw that goes into the base and then into the handle. Made people nervous exhibiting it, but it really is pretty sturdy. I didn't make the base. It was made by a friend, commissioned. I didn't have the saw for that, but I like that one. Okay. This is the one that I also thought that the person said was like a haiku, and I appreciated the analogy. It's an old door from like tool chest that I found at an antique store, and just took the door, and I embedded it with rhinestones just across the center part there, and I call it First Snow. It's hanging in my house, and when the light strikes at certain times of the day, it just glistens like crazy. It just has that, you know, fresh snow kind of glisten to it, which, you know, I liked. You know, as an artist, you know, you wonder, do I have too many rhinestones or not enough rhinestones, and are they too orderly, and blah, 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 you know, how much element of chance is involved in that. But I just carved out a little hole for each one and super glued them in, and it's that and the other First Snow, or the Snow on Water piece, are I guess if I had to choose things, those would be up there. Okay. I took a chair apart and reassembled it. I was thinking about retirement, and this is called retirement. The metaphor is, the chair, and changing the chair into art, still making art, kind of resisting that retirement thing. I like the modernist kind of sculptural look that it has. There are 1,000 different variations I could have done with that. So I played around with it a little bit, and I thought, okay, that's good. This was in a show at the university. This one has a fossil, a book that I sawed in half, put behind, and a bookmark that comes off the bottom. It's called My Place in History. Fossil, get it? Okay. And this one was purchased by an artist and taken out of Alaska, and I kind of regret giving it up. I like the simplicity of it. I found this case, I think it was for a fishing pole, and I put red velvet in it, as if it's holding this extremely valuable artifact. And it's a bamboo pole, and it has a little, just dipped the end in white paint. It's called the measurement. Okay. This is a poor slide, but these are some objects. The one on the left is surrounded by thinned acrylic, has some wood carving, has a shell in the middle, has heated plexi bubble. The middle part is a toll, the growth, and a drawing of it to the right as a shadow. Then there's a brush and some other stuff, and this is from a scroll, a piano scroll on the right. A lot of my work refers to these, I call them disclosures. If you're walking along in Fairbanks or anywhere in Alaska, and break-up time, and things just appear through the snow and ice again. These objects that were hidden all winter are suddenly coming back. Might be a growth, might just be because the stone is absorbing the heat. It might be that it's just melting in that one spot to begin with. But I've used that theme a lot, often calling it disclosures. Like you'll see bones, like the remnants of a fight with birds or animals. There's just like all this is happening out there, and it's all hidden by the darkness and the snow, and then in the spring the evidence appears. And the scroll says, I can't remember, but it's you, just you, something or other, the piano words, but you have to read it in reverse because that's the way that scrolls through. Okay. This is called Half Empty. Just sawed the bucket in half. Okay. This was the award-winning piece in the Earth, Fire, and Fiber show one year. Also, it's called Sun/Rain. It actually started as a woodcut that was printed by a steamroller. I did a woodcut on plywood, and then put a piece of paper over it, and Gary Cullitz at the university was printing with a steamroller, and so I ran over the top, rolled over the top of it and printed the image. I actually got a real nice image of it. Then I had the black, and I thought, let's should do something else with that. So I put it in this accordion shape and hung the thing like I did those other pieces. I always kind of liked to, I always remember what the juror said, speaking of jurors. He said, he said, I didn't want to give this anything, but it's so well crafted that I had to say. So I guess I got some kind of reluctant award. But it's okay, I'll take it. I did this for a show about Quonset huts. I had a show at the museum. There was a show at the museum. My daughter worked on it with Chris Shy about Quonset huts in Alaska. The book's available out there somewhere. Anyway, I was asked to put a piece in the show at the International, and I decided to use materials that were apropos to Quonset huts. You know, it was the cheapness of the building that made them popular, the functionality. And so these are two, cardboard tubes that they use for pouring pilings and stuff, sauna tubes. And I used some reflective tape and some yellow duct tape, put the two columns just slightly apart from each other, and I called it arc squared. A little take on Quonsets. I had a New York art writer and critic, David Dieter, just has a new book out, this was a favorite of his. He's told me that I was onto something there, Don. So I found it interesting because I wouldn't have guessed it. And this I thought was kind of fun. I put this in. I had a graduate show in Vermont at the Vermont College of Fine Arts of my final show. And I had some foam cord pieces and cloth pieces and drawings and stuff. And right in the middle of the exhibition space was this marble carved female nude, like a reclining nude on a sofa on this ugly base, like something from the pre-Renaissance. And they said, "Oh, we can't move it." So I said, "Well, I'm going to have this like reclining marble nude in the middle of my exhibition." Well, I guess so. So I went to the store and I got saran wrap, and I wrapped it all up so it would look like it's frozen. And the evaluator, I can't remember where she is from, but anyway, she critiqued my show and she said, "Now this is the best piece in it," she said. Okay, thank you. Who knew, But that's kind of gratifying, like, okay, that worked. Okay. Did some paintings on metal, it's on aluminum. It's actually a box folds over the sides. A lot of sanding and scraping, inlet ice. Okay. This one I had a hard time with. I started with this commercial paper mache product. You mix it with water. It takes forever to dry. Could have a lot of good uses. I just was way too much trouble for me. I didn't like working with it. And then I didn't really know what to do with it. And I wanted to, it looked to me like terrain, like you'd see from the airplane. Not unlike some of the sites I saw flying in here yesterday. And I thought about how we carve up this geography. We have these plats and these boundary lines and, cut by utility lines. And I noticed yesterday it's all snow machine tracks or moose tracks. Sometimes you couldn't tell which was which. And so I decided I was going to put a pie shape in it. And in the middle of it, I put a pie shape, looked like apple pie or something. And as soon as I finished it, I just hated it. I thought, oh my God, there's a pie in it. No, it's worse than the ice cream cone. And so I scraped it all out, sanded it out, spray painted it, and then I put that rectangle on there, and I thought, well, that's it. That's the statement that I was looking for. It's like a surveyed line in this wilderness area. That's about 2 by 3 feet maybe. And here's another foam core thing. Took a piece of foam core, I put it on the wall, and I just scratched it off like this until it fell into a pile on the floor. And it has that snowy kind of, a lot of metaphors, similes to snow in Alaska and what happens, break up, all that kind of stuff. It's Sean Licka, who was the head of the art department at the university, looked at it and he said, "I love piles of stuff. I just love piles of stuff." Okay. There are a lot of artists doing that kind of pile thing, though. This was a part of the show. I think there's another image of that white cloth. I was interested in, I tried to find a white cloth that resembled fresh snow. And I put things under it that had some symbolic significance. And I wanted some suggestion of the dog, because it's personal to me, the dog in the wilderness. There's drawings that relate to it around the outside. And then this large, I think it's about 12 feet square or larger, piece of cloth. And I've used it in different ways, in different situations, different venues. Okay. I was teaching a sculpture class, and I wanted them to try some wood carving. And they all had chisels and mallets, and they weren't liking it. And I said, well, like this. And I think it was the one on the left I started out with. It's 3 separate pieces. The blocks were about that hard, and the wood was not good for carving, and they were getting pretty grumpy. But I said, well, you don't have to make it into a herd of stampeding buffalo or something, just get the hang of it. And so I started it, and then gradually, over the course of weeks, I just kept adding to it and changing it. And I put the 3 together, and it was in Earth, Fire, and Fiber, and then it was sold at auction. Kind of miss it. It's about the size you see it there, probably smaller actually. It's another foam core piece. It's called The Excavations. There's all kinds of stuff in there. Not a very good image of it. It's hard to capture. Okay. This one is an actual aquarium. And I put some sharks in it. There's 4 sharks in it. There's some ink and water, kind of ink blot kinds of stuff. I let the ink run through the water and create these kind of mysterious, surreal images. There's a little dog in the back in a chair. I was looking for an action figure that would represent me, and I looked at all kinds of action figures, which of course none of them were appropriate. But finally I found this one. It's Hannibal Lecter. The serial killer guy. And I thought, God, that's pretty close there. So I changed it around. I put some hair and gray hair, and I made these little glasses. And then I changed his arm around so he'd be carrying something. I didn't do a very good job of that. And that's a dental floss container for a briefcase. And I had it in a show where the faculty show, and this one student said to me, he said, it does seem like you, but what are the sharks? What do you think? Anyway, it actually lights up, it's an actual aquarium. It's kind of a fun piece. Somebody wanted to buy that from me and put it in their office until they found out how much I wanted for it. It's a fan.
How thin is that wood?
1/2 inch. It's heavy. This is pretty heavy. It takes 2 people to hang it. Okay. And this one, maybe you can zoom in on that a little bit. This is in the collection of the in the lower left. There you go. This is in the collection of the Anchorage Museum archives now. It's called Old Wounds. So there's stitching and, references to many things that have happened in Alaska. It's all just carved with a small curved blade. I added a little white to the finish so it'd be bright instead of a darker wood finish. Left the knots and kind of worked with the grain and with the knots. It's about 6 feet by 3 feet. Good zooming. I decided to do a piece that was with leftovers. I called it remnants. I just looked for stuff that was left from other things. The wood carving pieces on the left, just little shards of wood. I mixed it with a resin so that it would stay solid when it's hung on the wall. Just stacked ply, pieces that were cut from other things. And then they're actually in separate boxes in a plywood frame. Oops. It's funny, there's an Anchorage artist and his wife said to me, "I just love that piece. Can I get a slide of it?" And I said, "Sure, you can." I emailed her an image, and about 2 weeks later I was looking at a show and her husband did a piece almost like it. So I thought, what the heck? It was kind of ridiculous, but anyway. I don't really know. Is that why she asked me? Or? Okay, next. I made a plywood umbrella. It has canvas and bamboo. Had a really hard time with the center portion. Don't ask me why I made a plywood umbrella. It just seemed like the thing to do at the time. And the top is on the next image. This is also in a Earth, Fire, and Fiber show. Has a kind of aesthetic quality to me. Okay. And this one is 4 feet by 8 feet. It's called Rural-Urban Divide. There's a yin-yang thing going on. The right side is all natural, things that I found around forest areas. And the left side is a bowling alley. We were tearing out a bowling alley, so I took that piece of it. And somebody who works as a museum staff person has that piece now. Bless her heart. Okay. Get this? What's the name?
Rock, paper, scissors.
Rochambeau, rock, paper, scissors. It's an old workbench, I think it was. I had, the rock was easy, the paper I had around from, Japanese. I collect those kinds of things. Have a little tea house I built in the back. And then I thought, scissors would work. And then I remembered I had these old, I bought them at an Asian antique place in Seattle. And they're scissors from somewhere, Japan or somewhere. So it all fit together. It was a Zen thing. I don't have that anymore. I don't know what happened to it. Somebody has it. This was a show for the centennial, and it was right at the time when all the politicians were getting prosecuted and fined and put in jail. So I took the famous, I think it was the Anchorage Times that said "We're in" 1959. So I took that idea and I put it in a jail cell with a lock. It's kind of snarky, but do what you got to do. Yeah, Matt Johnson, the photographer, has it. Oh, this is in a big office complex in Anchorage. It's purchased for their corporate offices. This is canvas this time. So the angular pieces are a little more severe, but it's just another form of it. It's an acrylic painting. I worked really hard to get the sweep of those lines in the painting to be like I wanted them to be, and I wanted a lot of white. It's kind of like de Kooning when he was older. In his later years, he was using a lot of white in this kind of curvilinear line, and I've always admired those. So it's kind of the impetus for this piece. I live in a geodesic dome house, and so I'm interested in the angular thing too. And this is another example of that disclosure idea. Things, I've done a lot of things with burning and breaking and slashing and getting that idea of, a window into something else, These are resins on plastic and cloth. I thought this was something that was unique to me, and then I've become aware of an artist, Alberto Burri, B-U-R-R-I, who does really similar things, and it's kind of a hot property now, as opposed to me. Like, hey, what the heck? I was doing this too. But anyway, I think you'd like his work, Buried. And I was walking through the labs at the University of Alaska, and I found these two pieces of sandpaper. They're made to sharpen pencils, and then you tear it off, and there's another piece of sandpaper. And so I didn't do anything with these. I just found them, and they reminded me of the Twin Towers. So I entered them in a photography show. I photographed them, called it Towers, and I was just really struck by the similarity, and it didn't really do anything except find them. They're small. They're probably 3 inches. The metaphor just seemed inescapable. Here's that cloth piece on Cooking Lit. I wanted to photograph it and see how it interacted with the environment in different places. It was windy, so I put rocks around it, and then I thought that kind of worked. I was out there putting it together, and somebody came by and they said, "Is that for fishing?" Well, no, but you could, I guess. Okay. Well, this was part of that planetary thing. This is resins and aluminum and stuff like that. It's suspended above a base. This was in a show at Juneau Museum, State Museum. There's not too many left, I promise. Last time I gave a talk here, I had slides, and one of the artists came up and beforehand and looked in the slide projector to see how many I had. Like, see what he's in for. Like, how many you got? This is called Seasons. It's just pine boards, acrylics. There's bamboo between them, kind of tied on. A little too much color compared to what I usually do, but it's okay.
Do you do your own photography?
What about photography?
Do you do your own photography?
Yes, not always. I've had things done. I'll show you a slide coming up where that didn't work out so well. But yeah, I try to do my own, especially lately with the digital thing, and I got some better lighting. And also you can iPhoto and Photoshop them and make up for, some mistakes as opposed to the old days. But that one's mine, I can't say they're all good, no. Okay. So sanded ply, so you see the layers, has to do with the layering thing. The blue is the blue of the plywood underneath. The white that looks like ice formations are photographs, and they're covered with resin, so for archival considerations, and poured resin, and there's some foam in there also.
What's that one called?
I have no idea. Forgot.
Sorry.
Is that something like, I think it was Breakup. Actually, now that you mention it.
What's the size?
But it was about 2 feet diameter. So carved foam. Some of it's torched, spray painted. You can't see very well, but there's aerial maps underneath some of them. So it looks like Alaska terrain. Okay. It's not something you want to do too much. It's environmentally and physically toxic. This is another styrofoam thing. I took a piece of styrofoam and I just scratched a hole in it. It's torn down the bottom, a part that I particularly like. But I like the haphazard nature of it. It's, you know, like it's what happens in nature. Things aren't planned, they just kind of crumble apart and melt. And I took a video at Rainbow Creek of ice formations and things running under the ice and melting, and with sound. And so I put it on the floor so that when you stand over it, it looks like you're standing, you know, on the ice and you see the water running underneath. The video ran about maybe half hour, and then would cycle, would loop. And it had a beautiful sound to it of running water, which is just natural. These are some of those pieces in a show at the International. Okay. And then, God help me, I decided to make baseballs. And I spent endless hours researching where the major leagues get their materials from. And people got so tired of my saying these are made with all major league materials that they told me just to shut up about it. But I went to so much trouble to get them, like the inner rubber portions, center, and the yarn, the leather, the lacing, everything. I wanted it to be like a major, as close. I knew it was never going to be good. I mean, not like a good Major League Baseball. I wanted it to be a little funky and handmade, but I also wanted it to be as good a baseball as I could make. And this one I bronzed. I had the Anchorage Bucks agree to use it in a, not this one, but the other one, in between games of a doubleheader on the 4th of July. And they tossed it around the infield and hit it to shortstop and stuff and play with it. And they all signed it for me. And it was a lot of fun. Somebody videotaped it. And this was the first one I made. And I wanted it to be worn, so I threw it against the wall. And we batted it around and played catch and made sure it got used. So I didn't want a pristine baseball. But that's what I ended up with. It's pretty close to size. You know, a major leaguer or an umpire would definitely throw it out of the game, but you know, for somebody who never made a baseball, I was kind of proud of it. It's not easy, I can tell you that. Then I did a lot of boxes, and boxes had lenses so that when you look through them, there's a lot of, I like the idea of microscopes and telescopes and the fact that you don't necessarily know the difference until you're told that there's a microcosm and a macro astronomy. And so I was fascinated. I spent a lot of time collecting lenses and ordering lenses and making lenses and putting them in boxes and different things behind them. These are just a few examples of looking through lenses. I was part of a show. This was, yeah, go ahead. I think it might be the next one. This is part of a show with the alien creature thing. I had planetary forms that were done in resin. Okay. There's another one. I used garbage bags for that.
How tall is this?
5, 6 feet. These are just branches, alder branches. Okay. Another one, resins. I didn't mean to make it look like a jellyfish, but it does. Okay.
Does this one hang from the ceiling?
Yeah, it's hung from the ceiling. And it's the rubber or fiber cords come in and they scramble around on the floor like a pile. Another one is painted acrylic, kind of a combination of contemporary painting and I think that's yeah, it is. It's paper mache, that one. I used a plexi dome window to form the spheres. There's another looking in the box. This would spiral out at you when you look through. Okay. There's another one. Okay. Kind of get the idea. This one's kind of fun. I had a round mirror made. I scratched away the back of it. So I put this and then did this drawing to put behind it. And I used license plates around the outside. I called it rear view mirror. Margaret Hughie-Lewis, the artist, she has it in her living room, believe it or not. She said it was a nice ass. That's what she told me. And when I was asked to bring some examples of my work to Vermont, I brought these 3 because they would fit in my suitcase. They're pretty small. And I thought that they looked like Alaska. I saw in them this, sea ice and melting streams and rocks and all that kind of stuff, landscape. And the first critique I had, the person said, well, this is obviously the Caribbean. But I can see why you might say that kind of turquoise. The glacier color could be either. But I didn't expect that. Fjords, it's cottonwood on ply. Okay. Frost. These are just twigs found around Homer, I believe. And I drilled holes, put them in this plywood. So it looks like, you have these branch tree formations and they're getting iced. It's about 2 feet diameter also. Yeah, yeah, I've heard that before. Some of them really look like cigarette butts. No, you're right. That's true. Okay. This has rocks and nails around it, plexiglass, found objects, a glass dome, a metal sign I found. Divided again. I don't know why I keep doing that. Just like the combination, the diptych idea. I think this is the one that's owned by the Visitors Bureau in Kenai. Okay. This was a children's show about maps. So I did this one of a McDonald's hamburger and fries and shake. The top one's photographic map, like an aerial photograph. Then there's a grid with coordinates in the middle. And then the relief map at the bottom. I called it Mick mapping. I don't know if the kids got it or not, probably not. Okay. And this one for a show about bugs. This title was supposed to be bugs, so these are all found objects. There's pencils and plastic containers and wire and screws and pen holder and all that kind of everything I could find. I have this little guy pushing a larva around. I called it Buggy. This is an old door I cut and reassembled into this pyramid without doing anything else to it. I just wanted the door just redone, kind of like that chair piece, called a reliquary. This one somebody purchased and then donated it to the museum collection, called Yin and Yang. It's a cardboard kind of surface like you would find on the back of a drawing pad, that kind of fiberboard. And then paper tied around at the top. It's just paper that's folded and tied. Has that kind of Asian influence. Just scored marks at the bottom. It's kind of a male-female thing. Yes. And it's all covered with graphite. It's actually black. It looks brown there. This piece is also in their collection. Same idea. It's the top wood was just sawn with the electric saw over and over to get that kind of roughened effect. And then there is a board that's cut into sections, not all the way through, and then wound with fabric. It's about the size you see it there. Another example. This one a little thinner. Okay. Oh, here's an example of having slides taken. I had these slides professionally taken. This was a chrysalis that it's about that size. It was meant to hang from the ceiling from a branch for this show about something, forgot what, science or insects or something. And so I constructed the butterfly forms out of cloth, and then I wrapped it with this see-through and put resin on it. And I wanted it to hang from the branch, and so the photographer positioned it this way, which I just hate. You know, it's supposed to be a hanging piece, but that's what happens. Nobody cares but me, though. This is called corrosive creativity. It's about the size you see it there. It's pretty big. Aluminum, have 3 big bolts that are squashing the paint tube so it looks like the paint is coming out. Somebody has it in their garden. Okay. There's another plexi piece, a lot of it burned through. There's things underneath. It's a frozen stream, and there's glass and resin and found objects underneath. So if you go up close to it and look through it, you can see these things as though they're, you know, on the creek bottom or floating. Nothing new to say about that one. It's a diptych. It's 4 by 8 feet, all carved. That's agate stone on the blue on the left. It was supposed to be like spring and like winter and spring. The right side had some growth. See the little green sprouts and stuff. So it goes from winter. It's that disclosure thing again. Okay. This is called love letters. Just found objects. I was thinking today about doing another version of that. Completely different version, but the idea of love letters has a lot of possibilities. And I think that's the last one, isn't it?